Hi, good evening. This is the Composite. I'm Deanne Battle, and we're in season 5. This is episode 10. All right, so this definitely will be a shorter one. I was just getting set up here. Might look at a couple of articles, and then our poetry per usual. And I think another meditation would be helpful. I was like, oh, Saturday night, maybe I should have something festive, but kind of in a meditative mood here. So just a second. So I've got phone screen here, computer screen here. Let's see. Okay. All right. So what's really an interesting enterprise? If you've shopped at Amazon over the years, go back and look at, your purchase history, because, excuse me, I was looking at cookbooks. I'm heavily considering going vegan again. I think just in general wanting to, feel refreshed, renewed, but then also just the ways in which our regulatory industries in the United States, the way in which those are being dismantled, just leaves me unsettled. And so I think there have always been questions around the ways in which we regulate, meat products and things like that, and dairy here. But then, excuse me, it's feeling exacerbated now, again, because of the ways in which though all of the regulatory functions, whether it's financial, food, medical, like all of that stuff is being gutted. And so every day that passes, I'm less and less confident about the meat and, again, dairy, so on and so forth, that we have access to, and the ways in which it's regulated. And so, it just feels like a good time to just, think about easing back into it. And so I was looking at cookbooks, and I'm like, oh, let me, just see historically the cookbooks that I've bought. I think I've mentioned before, I went through a period of time for like 2 to 3 years where I thought I wanted to go to culinary school. I was doing a ton of cooking, at home, and, reading food magazines and subscribing to food magazines and things like that, testing out new seasonings, taking cooking classes in person. And so I would buy used cookbooks from Amazon, just like, old school cookbooks. And so I was like, oh, let me just go and look at, excuse me, I wasn't yawning, and then I get on here and then this happens. But, so I'm looking and I'm like, oh, this is interesting. For some reason, the used cookbooks that I bought were not on the list. I mean, I guess maybe because they were used and, Amazon was not like the main seller per se. But then I started looking at other stuff that I bought, and then just if you go by year, they're like trends. It's like, oh, this year I was on a health kick, and I bought a new water bottle. I was keeping up with the water filters, a bunch of vitamins. Another year, okay, a bunch of writing craft books. That was the first year I started my MFA. This year X, this year Y, and then so I was just looking at that for like about 20 minutes or so before I started preparing to come on here. And then I just had a moment It's just like these are all things. These are all products. I mean, can you really reinvent yourself with things? Or is it a crutch? And it just shows me like the fads that I was going through. And then I have years where it's like you bought nothing. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, wonder what I was up to during then. I've always had a terrible memory, but as I get older, it's getting worse and worse. Just things escape me. I think that's why, again, we'll do a meditation. I need to do more work on, being present and in the moment. Maybe that'll get stuff to stay up in the noggin here. But it's just really fascinating if you can understand yourself, like as a consumer, what type of consumer are you? And then once you understand what type of consumer are you, it's like, are you reassured by that? Are you alarmed? What do you do with that information? So I recommend that, just, kind of scanning through your, and I know like there's a kick now not to buy from Amazon. I was not yawning. I promise you before I got on here. There's a kick not to buy from Amazon, and so I'm down with that. But if you are someone who has an Amazon account, take a look, or just any, maybe if you have some place where you're making regular online purchases and it has like a record of it, take a look through it and see. This is ridiculous. ah Go and see, kind of, if you have the same thing where you go through trends and stuff about what you buy. Yeah, it's really, I feel there's an essay in there. If I write about it, I'll do some excavating, to use Amit Shah's term, a few episodes ago, the writer that we interviewed. Do some excavation, then I'll come back and maybe report back on it. Yeah, very interesting. All right, so let's see what we've got going on here. Like I said, maybe just one or two articles to take a look at. Okay. Okay, so apparently we've attacked Yemen yet again. So we can take a look at that. Hmm. And then yeah, having a quick check on what's happening vis-a-vis the federal government and the reductions in terms of federal employment. Yeah, yeah, we'll do those two articles, and then a meditation, and then we will call it meditation and poems, and then we'll call it a night, because I don't. No way, I keep yawning. This is ridiculous. Um, but that's where it is. Okay. Let's log in, because it's behind the paywall. Sorry, this is not the most interesting thing, watching me log in on stuff. Okay. Continue without subscribing, thanks. Okay. Now, quick update. So, I thought it was going to take about 3 weeks for Best Buy to fix my computer. They actually sent me an email on Friday. So I turned it in on Friday after work, so like basically Friday evening. And I got an email by, Wednesday after work, like so basically Wednesday evening. And then I got an email by Friday afternoon that it was fixed. So I'm like excited, but I'm a little nervous because I'm like, what if I show up and they're like, oh, yes, sorry, we're not going to fix this. Here it is. Because the email doesn't give me any information. It just says schedule, a meeting to come get your shit, basically. But I'm hoping that they were like, oh, it was a small fix. It was fine. And they didn't charge me. So that's great. So all types of noveling can happen as of tomorrow afternoon, because that's when I'm going to go to Best Buy to get my shit. So, you have to be thankful for the little things here. Okay, so it's only going to give me, oh wow. So it's, okay, so everything's behind the paywall. I do have New York Times access through my work account, but it's kind of onerous sometimes to log in on that, whereas the Google Schmoogles, you just click the button. So I'm just going to try to find these topics from other news sources. All right, New York Times. And it's not that I don't think that they should not get paid for journalism. However, given the level of faulty journalism that they've released, and it's always been an issue off and on, but I would argue I've just always looked at them sideways since the weapons of mass destruction fiasco. I'm like, if you're lying about that, what the hell else are you lying about? The best thing they've got going on now, probably, to be honest, the recipes, which brings us back to cookbooks here. But yeah, all of that being said, let me find this information from other sources. Okay, we've got the Associated Press, and then let's see here. Okay. We can go with the Hill for the Yemen article. Okay, so let's start with the Yemen piece and do a little bit of looking. And for the uninitiated, I am an English teacher, and I talk shit on the internet. Here's where I do it. I'm not a historian. I'm not a political scientist or anything like that. I'd like to believe I'm an intelligent person, and I know how to read. So I put those two things together and do a little bit of layman's analysis here. All right. Okay, so this article from The Hill, and then afterward I'll put the links in the chat or in the comments. U.S. launches decisive and powerful strike against Houthis in Yemen. Okay, so that's the title of the article. And then here, okay, I see what this is about. Now, The Hill has no paywall, but they're flashing ads in front of everything. And so now I can't see the article. So let's just take a little sidebar here. So I was on a Zoom earlier and, just talking to some folks about, meeting. Because I'm just really thinking of ways how can average people mobilize to try to alleviate some of this misery. Because, even things, just the most minor things, everything costs so much money. And it's like, again, it's not that magazines or, online news sources or whatever don't deserve to be paid, but it's just that everybody hops on a bandwagon at the same time. So, for instance, as a teacher, So I'll use the audiovisual resources that we have in the classroom, because we're not making our students buy textbooks. We're trying to save costs. We're trying to educate them in the most cost effective way possible. And so we do incorporate a lot of articles, a lot of, scholarly journals, online research into our classes. And it's just really frustrating when you're teaching from semester to semester. And then, so it's like, oh, let me get this straight. I had this same article that I had access to, or this same interview, so on and so forth, that I had access to last semester, which was about 2 months ago. Then now I'm trying to access it for another group of students, and everything's behind a paywall. It's just like, so you have to make a PDF of everything, or just, you always have to or copy and paste into a Word doc. Like, everything is so, I'm trying to get out of a scarcity mindset, and it's really frustrating because I'm going in this direction, so I'm going left, yet the world is going right. And the world is in a very scarcity mindset, a miserly mindset, and it just, every day I see more and more things that reinforce that, and it just makes me so frustrated, because we do have so much here. Why are we hoarding? Why are we such misers as a nation? It just really bothers me. Okay. But okay, the commercial on the Hill article has stopped. So now I can actually read this for you. Okay, so it says, President Trump said the United States has launched a decisive and powerful strike against Houthi militants in Yemen, warning that the military will use overwhelming lethal force until the Iran backed, and then another thing popped up. Rebels stop their attacks on cargo ships and free up shipping lanes in the region. Okay. Yeah, so this is about money. Surprise, surprise. No terrorist force will stop American commercial and naval vessels from freely sailing the waterways of the world, Trump said in a Saturday post on Truth Social. The attacks were carried out by Air Force attack jets and armed drones that took off from various bases in the region, along with fighter planes from the Harry S. Truman air carrier. A source familiar with the matter told The Hill. The source added, this is not a one-day event. This is the first of many days, if not weeks, of strikes. The Houthis have choked off shipping in one of the most important waterways of the world, grinding vast swaths of global commerce to a halt and attacking the core principle of freedom of navigation on which international trade and commerce depends, the president said. Interesting. I'm just scrolling ahead here. Okay. All right, so listen, a few things about this. One, I'm not going to get into it, but you know what these people want. They want us to back the fuck off of that region. Will we? Will we listen? Clearly not. I mean, that's the easiest thing to do, is to leave folks in that region alone. Stop funding certain military efforts in that region. And I think that the Houthis would stop. I just think it's remarkable that, my understanding is that, these are just, very skilled fighters. They don't, it's saying, yeah, they're backed by Iran, but, they don't really have resources or money. They just don't have anything to lose. And because of that, they just fight it out. And they just slug it out. And we're on the losing end of that. And you see that we're sending drones. That's a bit embarrassing. To have the most expensive and most sophisticated military in the world, allegedly. in addition to the level of and brutality of our weaponry, and these folks are still choking off the shipping lanes. So like I said, I'll post the article. And then that also leads me to believe that prices will continue to rise on, said goods that come through that waterway. Partially because, the area is being, commandeered, so to speak. But I think also partially because I've noticed corporations, whether it's COVID or the bird flu with the egg situation, any minor disruption, and they want to do 20% increase or whatever. So they'll do a lot of price gouging around that too, I suspect. Probably starting next quarter, because the first quarter is almost over. That's depending, if we, I guess, eliminate the Houthis. I doubt that that's going to happen. It's just, again, Yemen is just really one of the poorest areas of the world right now, from my understanding, and in terms of everything that they've been through. So, yeah, they're going to keep fighting. All right. So here's another article. And this one's from the Associated Press, and it says, anger, chaos, and confusion take hold as federal workers face mass layoffs. I've been talking to a lot of folks who, have a family member or a friend who are experiencing, these layoffs, and it's just, it's brutal. Let me just skip ahead here. Well, no, actually, not. I'm not going to skip this first paragraph. So the first paragraph says, workers across the country responded with anger and confusion Friday as they grappled with the Trump administration's aggressive effort to shrink the size of the federal workforce by ordering agencies to lay off probationary employees who have yet to qualify for civil service protections. So that's especially dirty because my understanding is a lot of these people that were in a probationary status were actually not new to that government agency. They had just gotten promoted. So like, let's say you're a worker and then you get promoted to supervisor. You have, a probationary period as a supervisor before, I guess, you have your job is quote unquote secured. And then so you're getting laid off like you just got there, which is not cool either, but you're getting laid off as if you just started there, when in actuality you had just gotten promoted. So it's basically penalizing you for getting promoted. And then I wonder if you could sue for that, because it's kind of like you got the job under false pretenses. Part of the reason that you want to work for the federal government is the stability of the position, right? So let's say if you were applying at 3 private companies and the one federal job, you accepted the federal job on the premise that after the probationary period that you would have access to the civil service benefits. And so if they fired you not for performance, but just because you were in the probationary period, that's, I don't know, like that seems like fraud. Like it seems like, okay, so they're randomly changing the nature of the position when you accepted the position under a certain parameters. I'm not a legal scholar of any sort, but that just seems so fishy. In a sign of how chaotic the firings have been, some who received layoff notices had already accepted the administration's deferred resignation offer, under which they were supposed to be paid until September 30th if they agreed to quit, raising questions about whether others who signed the deal would nonetheless be fired. Wow. On Friday evening, the Office of Personnel Management, which serves as a human resource department for the federal government, acknowledged that some employees may have received termination notices in error and said the buyout agreements would be honored. So then you've accepted the federal job under, some parameters, right? And then they violate that. They offer you a buyout, you accept the buyout, they violate the buyout and fire you anyway. Like, I don't know. This just seems like a human resources disaster. No. Wait, whose quote is this? Someone named Nicholas Detter, who works as a natural resource specialist. When you get further down into the article, he says, quote, "None of this has been done thoughtfully or carefully," end quote. According to government data maintained by OPM, 220,000 workers had less than a year on the job as of March 2024. So they don't know exactly how many people have been fired, but the pool is close to a quarter of a million people. Wow, this is crazy. They hit the Department of Veterans Affairs, the Education Department, which they're just trying to kill in general. 1,300 people from the CDC when we have an ongoing pandemic and new emerging ones, including a growing measles outbreak. This is crazy. Okay, so this article is very long, which is good. It's extensive. This is a well done piece in terms of how they separate out the information. Now, going a little further down, will the cuts reduce the deficit? The layoffs are unlikely to yield significant deficit savings. The government spends about $270 billion annually compensating civilian federal workers, according to the Congressional Budget Office, with about 60% going to the workers at the Department of Defense, Homeland Security, and Veterans Affairs. Even if the government cut all of those workers, it would still run a deficit over $1 trillion. But Trump's mass layoffs of federal workers could come back to bite him in economic data. The monthly jobs reports could start showing a slowdown in hiring, if not turn negative at some point after the February numbers are released. Okay, so I can't remember if I mentioned it. It's the pundits that I've watched, about this issue said, okay, well, if you are cutting people federally, then they'll have to go to the private sector, and then the private sector can now pay them less because they're, desperate to be employed. But I don't know, like, the logic behind that, because I like, okay, so if we look at my industry, education, I would make more money as, a New York City public school teacher than I made in a private school. Private schools don't really pay well at all. I mean, and then part of it is they say, oh, okay, because, you have more resources and access to better students. That's supposed to be the better work environment. That's supposed to be like compensation within itself. So you make like substantially less than a public school teacher. So I think it just depends on the industry in terms of whether or not you you know oh, I guess what I'm saying is reinforcing that. Okay, so if the public sector paid more, and then and then you got fired, and then okay, I needed to talk that out. My fault. And then you go to the private sector, they can pay you less. Okay. But then, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, because in general, my understanding is that, part of the Republican ethos is government doesn't work, but you're firing the people that actually make it work. So then now you can say, oh, this is terrible, it's inefficient, and da 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 da. It's just like you haven't thought through where to scale back. You're just kind of culling the herd. And so yes, the education department, which you hate because you don't want to educate workers anymore, it's people are not going to be able to get like their student loans or grants and stuff like that processed, because you're getting rid of everybody that does it. The IRS is not going to work as well, because you're getting rid of the people who might investigate the fraud or who might follow up, and do audits and things like that. You're getting rid of key positions. It's not like, and I mean, who am I to say like if somebody's job is a key job or not, but like to fire 1,300 people from the CDC, and this is just the 5th anniversary since the COVID-19 epidemic started. That's wildly irresponsible. And I believe that there are still over 700 people a week dying from COVID and COVID-related issues. But then you'll say, oh, the CDC is terrible, it doesn't work. It's like, well, you got rid of those people. It's just the logic or lack thereof that's being brought to these endeavors. It's just, I mean, do they want us to be a government-less country? Because I'm not sure that works either. Wow. Unbelievable. All right, so let's get into a meditation. So, a couple of episodes ago, I talked about the 8 guided mindfulness meditations pack. I'll share the link with this episode again. And we kind of walked through one of the meditations, although I kept, my lack of focus, I kept stopping and talking through it. But I'm going to be more disciplined with this one, okay? And so what I'll do is I'll read through it and I'll pause at certain points. But even if you don't do this meditation, like I said, being present with yourself, being present with myself, I think is super important right now, especially since, from a geopolitical standpoint, this administration is just flooding the zone with bullshit, and it's just like you gotta surf that wave. You just have to ride it in terms of trying to figure out how to navigate everything. And I think the only way forward through that is to just really be still mentally so you can focus, okay? So, I'll read the script of this here. And this one's called Bringing Your Mind Back from Thoughts. Unhooking from thoughts. Thoughts are a part of everyone's human experience. You don't need to push them away in order to practice. Learning to bring your mind back from its thoughts is the practice. But how do you let go of the thoughts once they've pulled you in? This exercise offers one way to unhook yourself from those thoughts and simply let them be. Without pushing the thoughts away or denying their presence, you can be aware of the thinking mind while remaining unattached. Settle into a seated posture and close the eyes. Notice the energy in the mind and body. Okay, so I'm seated, eyes closed. Okay. As you come into a period of mindfulness practice, you may notice the energy of your day resting in the mind and body. The mind may be active, the body may feel worked up, or you may notice a bit of lingering anxiety. Think of a shaken snow globe with all that energy swirling around. As you rest, the little snowflakes fall gently to the ground. Think of yourself as a snow globe and every snowflake as a thought. I like that. In this way, watch as each and every snowflake falls to the ground. Do not force yourself to calm down. Let it happen slowly and organically. After a minute or so, bring your attention to the breath in the body. Choose one spot where the breath is felt easily. It may be at the center of the chest, the abdomen, the shoulders, or the nostrils. Observe the physical sensation of the body breathing. Observe the breath for a few minutes. Bring the mind back when it wanders. Stick with the snow globe visualization as thoughts begin to rise up. Observe as they slowly settle back down. After a couple of minutes, focus on the breath. Open your awareness to include your thoughts and your general mental state. Instead of returning to the breath when the mind wanders, notice what the mind is doing. You may notice yourself planning, fantasizing, figuring out, or replaying past experiences. Whatever you observe the mind doing, let it be. When you recognize a thought, what happens? Try not to encourage the thought, but don't push it away either. Allow it to be, allow it to go on its own. See if you can watch the passing of the thought as it follows the natural trajectory and leaves the mind. Return to the breath and patiently wait until another thought arises. Notice it, watch the thought, and come back to breath again. Continue with mindfulness of breath and thoughts. Notice when you're lost in thought or when the mind wanders for some time. If self-judgment arises, notice that just as you would any other thought, you can always return to the breath for a few moments to ground yourself back into the practice. Okay. All right. So again, I'll post a link to this, but essentially, you want to find a calm place where you can, sit upright, close your eyes, and imagine a snow globe, which I kind of find distracting. You know what I kept thinking of? I wasn't thinking of a shaken snow globe with the snow, falling to the bottom of the globe. I remember when I was a kid, in New York when it used to really, really snow, and there used to be drifts and stuff to play with outside. And then I remember used to take my mom 15 minutes to put each of us in our snowsuits, and we'd have on our snowsuits with I don't know if you remember what it's called when you have the strap and the glove is attached to the strap, and then you've got the bottom part of the overalls and you put it on. So you've got the overalls and you zip that up, and then you've got the coat over the top of it and the gloves attached and scarf around. And then we would be like Cartman, just this much of us out of our faces out. And then all I kept seeing in my mind was you're bundled up, and then you walk out and it's snowing. And then I'm imagining that first snowflake that touches your nose and how cold it was, and then how it would like start to melt. So that's what the snow globe made me think of. I wasn't thinking of like the little fake snow going to the bottom of the globe. I'm thinking of the real snow on the end of my nose. So, okay. And now we're at the end of our broadcast, and I want to share 2 poems of the day with you. As I always say, I'm a writer, a storyteller, and, even when the world is, well, it's always in chaos, but when it's especially in chaos as it is and recently, I think it's important to look to art, to look to beauty, for inspiration, for solace, for peace. And this first poem is from poets.org, and it's by Frances Dana Barker Gage. Okay, and this is a longer one. It's called Woman the Poet. Okay. Woman the Poet. The greatest female poet, said a gentleman friend to me, has fallen below our mediocre men. Tell me not, proud man, that woman never yet hath wrought her name with the golden threads of genius topmost on the scrolls of fame, that strongest, loftiest effort of the great woman's soul hath but halfway climbed the mountain, hath but midway reached the goal. There, beside the weaker brothers, in the shadows cold and high, she has thrown her withering laurels and hath laid her down to die. While above her in the sunbeams Homer, Milton, Shakespeare bask, and with mocking voices ever tell her of her hopeless task. Oh, there is a glorious poem in each earnest woman heart, struggling for a mighty utterance, struggling to become a part of the never-ending drama acting on life's fitful stage, hourly, daily, monthly, yearly, love and hope on every page. Think ye not, because she's plodding duty's daily round, that no glowing lines of beauty in her footsteps may be found, when she giveth meat in season to her household morn and night, when she giveth ease to suffering, or to darkness bringeth light, while she plieth broom and duster, needle scissor here and there, leaves she not glow. It's the syntax. Leaves she not aglow, a gladness, do not all things grow more fair. Mark, proud man, the patient mother, bending o'er the cradle low. List ye to her stirring heart songs, improvised in love tones low. She is writing, ever writing, poems earnest, true, and strong, on that fair, unsullied life page, nestled snowy downs among. She is writing, ever writing, love all holy holds her pen, will her lofty aspirations e'er be reached by mortal men? Can the creature she is forming soar beyond her earnest thought, or produce one trace of beauty which her soul hath not enwrought? She is writing, ever writing, busy day or quiet night, finds her pen still poised and ready, some great poet thought to write. Here a line of love and beauty, there a touch sublimely true, now a stanza breathing duty, ever marking something new, till at last her work completed, like a regal flower unfurled, every petal fresh and glorious, burst her poems on the world, burst to live and glow forever, shedding fragrance over the soul, gathering power and strength and wisdom, while the eternal years shall roll. Burst to live and glow forever, live above the earth chain clod, drawing all things human onward, upward to the throne of God. What living, breathing poems now are echoing the land, written from the heart of woman written from the heart of woman while God held her trembling hand. What were Homer, Milton, Shakespeare, all who've ever near fame's goal, but the inspired living poems of a loving mother's soul? Man may form the grand ideal and lay down the glorious plan, but the woman's work is real. 'Tis the mother makes the man. Oh, I like this one. She is writing, ever writing. Oh, yes. Oh, this is a nice one. I think I'm going to print this and put it on a wall or something. I was unfamiliar with this poet. Okay. That's a nice one. Okay. And our second poem here is from the Poetry Foundation, and it's called Arequipa. Arequipa, I believe. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing it. And it's by Ben Okri. Arequipa. Leaves that fall ought to breed fire from stone. The world counts on our fall. Our solitude interests the butterflies and the lost gold of afternoons. Ochre and blue walls and the fading peaks of volcanoes and the sunlight plummeting beyond the hills. Waken leaves to their lost trees. To discover you still have a world to make at sunset. Sobers the stones. This is pretty freeform in terms of the punctuation. Some of the lines or the couplets have periods and some don't. So I would want to just listen to the poet read it. I don't think I did it justice. Beautiful images though. And that was Arequipa by Ben Okri. I believe he's also a novelist as well. All right. So I hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend. This is the Composite Season 5, Episode 10. I am still Deanne Battle, and you all have a good night.